In 1974, you could walk into a Bernie Inn anywhere in Britain and order a prawn cocktail, a steak, and a Black Forest gâteau. Every single time, the same red leather seats, the same candle in a Chianti bottle, the same feeling that you were doing something special. By 1995, they were nearly all gone. But here is what nobody tells you. The experience those restaurants created, the atmosphere, the ritual, the sense of occasion, modern chains have spent billions trying to recreate it and failed. Number 14 on this list had a gimmick so brilliant that TGI Fridays essentially copied it wholesale. And number 3 served food so memorably bad that people still talk about it with genuine affection 50 years later. These 20 restaurant chains shaped how Britain ate out. They taught us what a restaurant was supposed to be. And then they vanished, replaced by identikit high street chains that all blend together. Before we start, hit that subscribe button because what you are about to see might make you genuinely angry about what we lost. Let us count down the 20 forgotten British restaurants from the 1970s we desperately want back. Number 20. The Angus Steakhouse. Those neon signs still flicker in Leicester Square, but in the 1970s, the Angus Steakhouse was everywhere. Aberdeen Angus beef, sizzling on a hot plate, brought to your table by a waiter in a burgundy waistcoat. The menu was laminated and sticky. The salad bar was a revelation. You could pile your plate high with coleslaw, potato salad, and those little pickled onions that nobody actually wanted, but everyone took anyway. A rump steak with chips and peas cost about £2.50 in 1975, roughly a quarter of the average weekly wage for a dinner that made you feel like you had arrived. The smell of charred beef and cigarette smoke filled those basement dining rooms. Families celebrated birthdays there, couples went on first dates, businessmen closed deals over T-bones and bottles of Blue Nun. Today, the surviving Angus steakhouses cater almost entirely to tourists who do not know any better. But in the 1970s, this was aspirational dining. This was treating yourself. Number 19. The Golden Egg. Before McDonald's conquered Britain, the Golden Egg fed the nation. Nearly 300 restaurants at their peak, all serving the same menu of eggs, bacon, sausages, and chips from breakfast until late. The logo, a cheerful yellow egg with legs, beckoned from high streets from Plymouth to Edinburgh. What made Golden Egg special was the promise. Walk in anywhere, anytime, and you knew exactly what you would get. Consistent, reliable, affordable. A full English breakfast cost about 45 pence in 1972. Students lived on it. Shift workers depended on it. Families on shopping trips made it their regular stop. The Formica tables wiped clean in seconds. The orange plastic chairs were indestructible, and those thick white cups of tea, strong enough to stand a spoon in. Trusthouse Forte bought them in 1973 and slowly merged them into Little Chef. By the mid-1980s, the Golden Egg was gone. But for a generation, that yellow sign meant one thing. You would not leave hungry. Number 18. Bernie Inn. The Bernie Inn did not just serve food. It created a template for casual dining that Britain had never seen before. Founded in Bristol in 1955, by 1970, there were over 140 Bernie Inns across the country. The formula was genius in its simplicity. Convert old pubs into restaurants, keep the character, add the catering. That exposed brick, those horse brasses, the low-beamed ceilings. It felt like heritage even when it was not. And the menu? Prawn cocktail, steak, Black Forest gâteau. The Bernie Holy Trinity. You knew what you were getting before you walked in the door, and that was precisely the point. A filet steak with all the trimmings cost about £3 in 1975. Serious money, but worth every penny for the theatre of it. The sizzling platter, the waiter grinding pepper from a wooden mill the size of a cricket bat. The satisfaction of cutting into properly cooked beef. Whitbread bought Bernie in 1970 and expanded aggressively. But the magic faded as the formula became tired. The last Burney Inn closed in 2009. An entire generation has never experienced what made it special. Number 17. The Wimpy Bar. Americans had McDonald's, Britain had Wimpy. And for most of the 1970s, Wimpy was better. Founded in 1954, the Wimpy Bar brought the American hamburger to British shores, but with crucial differences. You sat at a table. You were served by a waitress. Your burger came on a plate with a knife and fork. This was not fast food. This was proper dining that happened to involve hamburgers. The Wimpy itself was a quarter-pound beef patty, served in a toasted bun with chips and peas. The bender in a bun, a curved Frankfurter sausage, became equally iconic. Children went mad for the brown derby, a donut filled with ice cream and covered in chocolate sauce. A Wimpy meal cost about 60 pence in 1975. You could bring the family for under £3 and everyone left happy. But Wimpy failed to adapt when McDonald's arrived in 1974. The table service that once felt sophisticated now seemed slow. The proper plates and cutlery looked old-fashioned against paper wrappers and plastic trays. By the 1990s, Wimpy had shrunk from over 500 outlets to just a handful. A few still survive in motorway services and coastal towns. Walking into one feels like time travel. Number 16. Quality Inn. Quality Inn was the restaurant equivalent of the Ford Cortina. Solid, dependable, classless. You could bring your boss or your nan and neither would feel out of place. The menu covered everything. Steaks, grills, fish, chicken, a full page of omelettes, sandwiches for those who just wanted a snack. Nothing was exceptional, but nothing was bad either. The decor was brown, the carpets were patterned, the staff wore waistcoats and fixed smiles. Quality Inn gave you exactly what you expected, no more, no less. And in the 1970s, that counted for a lot. They clustered around town centers and shopping areas, feeding the Saturday crowds who needed somewhere reliable between Woolworths and Marks and Spencer. A roast lunch cost about £1.50. High tea with sandwiches and cakes, perfect for grandmothers treating grandchildren, was under £1. Quality Inn merged into the Beefeater brand in the 1980s. The name vanished, but the concept of the dependable family restaurant it helped create still dominates the high street. First pattern break, the Harvester origin story. Here is where things get interesting. The Harvester, that chain you probably think of as utterly modern, actually began in 1983 when Bass Charrington converted failing pubs into American-style salad bar restaurants. But they borrowed heavily from what came before. That salad bar concept everyone credits to American influence. Angus Steakhouse was doing it in Britain a decade earlier. The family-friendly format, the reliable menu, the sense of occasion without intimidation. That was Burney Inn's entire business model. Harvester did not invent anything. They refined what the 1970s chains had already proven worked. The unlimited salad bar, the coleslaw you piled high, the dessert trolley wheeled to your table. All of this came from restaurants we have already forgotten. Modern casual dining stands on foundations built by chains that no longer exist. Number 15. The Spaghetti House. Italian food in 1970s. Britain meant spaghetti bolognese and nothing else. The Spaghetti House chain, founded in London in 1955, brought respectability to pasta when most Britons still thought it came only in tins. Red and white checked tablecloths, candles in raffia-wrapped Chianti bottles, murals of the Bay of Naples. It was Italy as imagined by people who had never been there, and it was magnificent. The menu ran to dozens of pasta shapes and sauces. Lasagna, still exotic in the early 1970s, cost about £1.50. Scallopine, veal in breadcrumbs with lemon, seemed impossibly sophisticated. Even a basic plate of spaghetti with meat sauce came with grated parmesan from an actual wedge, not a green cardboard tube. Spaghetti House made Italian food acceptable to Middle England. Parents who had grown up eating meat and 2 veg took their children for spag bol as a treat. Those children grew up thinking Italian food was normal, not foreign. The chain survives in reduced form, mostly around central London, a living museum of how we learned to eat. Number 14. The Beefeater. Whitbread opened the first Beefeater in 1974, and within a decade they had transformed British dining out. The concept was pure genius. Take a pub, add a restaurant, and suddenly you could attract families, couples, and groups who would never set foot in a traditional boozer. The Beefeater menu was the Burney Inn formula refined and expanded. Steaks remained the star, but the carvery counter changed everything. Watch the chef slice your roast beef, choose your own portion, go back for more vegetables. That combination of theatre and value made the Beefeater irresistible. A carvery lunch cost under £3, and you could eat until you could not move. The decor leaned heavily on mock Tudor, exposed beams and horse brasses. Every Beefeater looked like it had been there for centuries, even the ones built in 1979. That manufactured heritage was part of the appeal. You were not just eating dinner. You were participating in tradition, however recently invented. Beefeater still exists, of course, absorbed into Whitbread's pub restaurant empire. But the current chain bears little resemblance to those 1970s originals, where the steaks were enormous and the salad bar was a genuine event. Number 13. The Steakhouse. Not the Angus Steakhouse, just the Steakhouse. A separate chain that peaked at over 40 locations in the 1970s, specializing in exactly what the name promised. No pretension, no complicated menu, just beef, cooked properly, served by people who understood that the customer had come for one thing. The dining rooms were dark, all red leather and wood paneling, designed to make you feel like you were somewhere serious even if you were in a basement in Croydon. The steaks came in sizes: 8 ounces for ladies, 12 ounces for gentlemen, 16 ounces for those who meant business. Chips were hand-cut. Peas came in a separate dish. The peppercorn sauce, made fresh, transformed a Tuesday night into an occasion. A sirloin with all the trimmings ran about £3 in 1976. That was serious money, but the steakhouse attracted people who were celebrating something: promotions, anniversaries, the closing of deals. It was where you went when ordinary would not do. The chain fragmented in the 1980s as individual franchises went their own ways. The brand disappeared, but the steakhouse concept it helped establish remains embedded in British dining culture. Number 12. Happy Eater. That grinning red face logo haunted Britain's A roads from 1973 onwards. Happy Eater was the bridge between the old world of transport cafes and the new world of family roadside dining. The restaurant sat in lay-bys and service areas, squat brown buildings with orange interiors that screamed 1970s before you even reached the menu. And what a menu! Breakfast served all day, roast dinners with all the trimmings, children's portions on smaller plates, ice cream sundaes as tall as your head. A family of 4 could eat for under £5, and the children got crayons and paper to keep them quiet. Happy Eater understood that parents driving long distances needed somewhere they could stop without drama. Clean toilets, quick service, food that children would actually eat. These seem like basic requirements now, but in the early 1970s they were revolutionary. Forte bought Happy Eater in 1986 and eventually merged it into Little Chef. The grinning face disappeared from the roadside. But if you grew up in the 1970s or 1980s, the sight of that logo still triggers sense memory of Ribena, chips with tomato sauce, and the backseat relief that the journey was finally broken. Number 11. Garfunkel's. Named improbably after Art Garfunkel, this chain brought American diner culture to British high streets in 1979. The menu sprawled across multiple pages: burgers, steaks, ribs, pasta, salads, sandwiches, omelettes, desserts taller than sensible. You could order breakfast at midnight or steak and chips at 10 in the morning. That American abundance, that refusal to limit what you could eat and when, felt genuinely exotic. The restaurants clustered around London's West End and major tourist areas, feeding the pre-theatre crowds and late-night wanderers. A rack of barbecue ribs cost about £4, messy eating that seemed thrillingly transgressive to British diners raised on knife and fork propriety. The bottomless coffee was a revelation. The sundaes, arriving in glasses the size of flower vases, became the measure against which all desserts were judged. Garfunkel's survives in reduced form, still scattered around central London. Walking into one today is like stepping into a time capsule. The menu has barely changed in 40 years. Second pattern break, the rise and fall of the steak. Notice how many of these restaurants centered on beef. In the 1970s, steak was the apex of British dining out. It represented value, sophistication, and the rejection of wartime austerity all in one sizzling package. By 1979, Britons were eating nearly 50 pounds of beef per person per year, much of it consumed in the chains we have been discussing. But then came the 1980s health scares. Saturated fat became the enemy. Cholesterol entered the vocabulary, and in 1996, BSE devastated beef consumption entirely. Steak never recovered its central position in the British dining out experience. The chains that had built their entire identities around sizzling platters and generous cuts found themselves stranded by changing tastes. Pizza Express, founded in 1965, but expanding rapidly through the 1980s, showed that casual dining did not require beef at all. The steakhouse era ended not with a bang, but with a quiet menu redesign. Beef relegated from star attraction to one option among many. Number 10. The Starkis Steakhouse. Rio Starkis built his empire from a single Glasgow cafe, eventually growing to over 30 steakhouses across Scotland and northern England. The Starkis formula combined the steak restaurant with the casino, a combination so profitable that it funded an entire hotel chain. The restaurants themselves were temples to 1970s glamour. Chandeliers, velvet upholstery, staff in formal attire. You dressed up for Starkis. This was an event, not just a meal. The wine list, impressive by British standards of the time, encouraged customers to linger. The portions were enormous, the steaks hanging over the edges of plates that seemed designed too small deliberately. A fillet steak dinner with wine might cost £8 or £9, nearly half a week's wages for many customers. But the Starkis experience was aspirational. You were not just eating. You were performing prosperity, showing the world and yourself that you had made it. Hilton bought the Starkis Group in 1999, and the steakhouse brand vanished. An entire culture of Scottish occasion dining went with it. Number 9. Huckleberries. In 1973, Huckleberries arrived with a concept so bizarre it should not have worked. American frontier theming, complete with wagon wheel decorations and staff in cowboy outfits, serving unlimited fried chicken. All you could eat for a fixed price, long before the concept became commonplace. The chicken came in red plastic baskets lined with paper, accompanied by coleslaw, corn on the cob, and bread rolls. Children could eat for half price. Families of 5 or 6 could fill themselves for under £10. The appeal was obvious, and the queues stretched around the block. That unlimited concept, rare in 1970s Britain, felt like abundance made physical. You could keep going back. There was always more. After decades of rationing culture and careful portioning, Huckleberries represented a new relationship with food. Plenty, not scarcity. Enjoyment, not economy. The chain expanded rapidly through the late 1970s before fading in the early 1980s. But its influence lived on. Every modern all-you-can-eat buffet, every unlimited wings night, every bottomless brunch descends from what Huckleberries proved possible. Number 8. The Country Kitchen. Country kitchen occupied the ground between the roadside cafe and the proper restaurant. Waitress service, but quick. Tablecloths, but paper ones. Home cooking, but someone else did the washing up. The menu read like a British housewife's repertoire. Shepherd's pie, fish and chips, liver and bacon, steak and kidney pudding with proper sweat crust, spotted dick and custard for afters. A 2-course lunch cost about £1.50. Nothing fancy, but everything correct. These restaurants attracted an older clientele, people who remembered when all cooking was country cooking, and who found the exotic menus of newer chains somewhat alarming. Grandparents took grandchildren. Retired couples made it their regular Friday treat. The dining rooms were pleasant rather than exciting, designed for comfort over spectacle. Country kitchen represented continuity, a place where the 1950s never quite ended and the 1970s never fully arrived. The chain declined through the 1980s as its core customers aged, and its concept seemed increasingly dated. But for those who remember, country kitchen remains the taste of a Britain that valued substance over style. Number 7. The Pancake House. American pancakes in 1970s. Britain were genuinely exotic. Thick, fluffy, nothing like the thin English pancakes served only on Shrove Tuesday. The Pancake House chains brought this American novelty to shopping centers and high streets, serving stacks drenched in maple syrup alongside bacon and eggs for breakfast or ice cream and fruit for dessert. The all-day breakfast concept seemed revolutionary. The idea that you could eat pancakes at 3 in the afternoon just because you wanted to challenged British assumptions about proper meal times. The restaurants attracted teenagers and young adults, people who embraced novelty and rejected their parents' rigid dining conventions. A stack of pancakes with all the toppings cost about £1.20. You could sit for hours, nursing refillable coffee, feeling vaguely American. The Pancake House proved that British diners would accept unfamiliar foods if presented confidently. It opened the door for all the international cuisines that followed. Number 6. Schooner Inns, Whitbread's nautical-themed restaurant chain launched in the early 1970s, converting suitable pubs into seafood restaurants with rigging, portholes, and menus shaped like ship's wheels. Fish was the star. Scampi in a basket. Plaice and chips. Grilled halibut for the adventurous. The captain's platter, a mixed grill of everything the sea could offer, became legendary for its size and value. A full fish supper with bread and butter cost about £2. The restaurants clustered in coastal areas and suburbs, bringing the seaside to landlocked diners who might never smell actual sea air. That theatrical commitment to theme, so common in American dining, but rare in 1970s Britain, made every meal feel like an occasion. You were not just eating fish, you were dining aboard ship, albeit one conveniently located next to a car park. Schooner Inns merged into other Whitbread brands through the 1980s. The nautical theming disappeared, but the connection between theme restaurants and family dining that Schooner helped establish remains central to how Britain eats out. Number 5. Wheeler's. Wheeler's was the old money establishment in a sea of new money chains. Founded in 1856, the Wheeler's restaurants represented proper fish dining, the kind where waiters in long white aprons brought Dover sole to your table and filleted it with theatrical precision. By the 1970s, there were 11 Wheeler's restaurants in central London, each attracting politicians, actors, journalists, and anyone else who needed to see and be seen. The Oyster Bar at Old Compton Street was legendary. Lobster thermidor cost an eye-watering £6 or £7, affordable only to expense account diners and the genuinely wealthy. But Wheeler's served a purpose beyond sustenance. This was where deals were made, affairs conducted, reputations established. The wood paneling absorbed secrets. The discreet booths enabled confidences. Eating at Wheeler's meant you belonged. The chain declined through the 1990s as property prices made central London restaurants increasingly difficult. Marco Pierre White revived the name briefly, But the original wheelers, those formal temples of fish, exist now only in memory and fading photographs. Third pattern break. Why we cannot bring them back. You might be thinking, someone should revive these concepts. The demand is clearly there. But here is why it cannot work. Property costs have transformed the economics of casual dining. A restaurant paying 1970s rents could afford to serve generous portions at modest prices. A restaurant paying 2020s rents cannot. Labor costs have risen faster than menu prices. The attentive service that made Burney Inn special required staff levels that would bankrupt a modern chain. Food costs, supply chains, regulations, everything that sits behind the restaurant experience has changed beyond recognition. We cannot recreate the 1970s restaurant because we cannot recreate the 1970s economy. What we can do is remember what made those places special and demand that modern restaurants at least attempt to match that sense of occasion. Number 4. Little Chef. That red and blue Little Chef sign, a tubby chef giving a cheerful wave, marked Britain's A-roads like no other brand. Founded in 1958, Little Chef hit its stride in the 1970s, eventually growing to over 400 locations. The Olympic breakfast became a national institution. 2 eggs, bacon, sausage, beans, tomato, mushrooms, toast, and unlimited tea or coffee. You could drive from Land's End to John O'Groats and never want for a consistent, dependable meal. The restaurants were identical, the same menu, the same decor, the same orange and brown color scheme that somehow made sense in 1975. Families planned journeys around Little Chef stops. Lorry drivers knew every location by heart. Traveling salesmen practically lived there. That consistency, that promise of the familiar in unfamiliar places, made Little Chef essential. The chain declined through the 2000s as motorway services improved and competition intensified. The final Little Chef closed in 2018, ending 60 years of roadside dining. Nothing has replaced it, nothing could. Number 3. Pontins Restaurants. This entry might seem odd. Pontins was a holiday camp, not a restaurant chain. But for millions of British families in the 1970s, the Pontins dining hall was their first experience of eating out. Long trestle tables, metal chairs, food served by cheerful staff in blue blazers. The menu was institutional. Roast chicken on Sundays, fish on Fridays, desserts involving jelly in quantities that would alarm modern nutritionists. None of it was good by any objective standard. The vegetables were boiled to submission. The meat was mysterious. The gravy, thin as dishwater, came from powder that had probably been army surplus. But here is what mattered. Families sat together. Children made friends at neighboring tables. Nobody had to cook or clean up for an entire week. The dining hall was liberation. It was holiday. It was the exotic ritual of eating somewhere that was not your own kitchen. Pontins declined through the 1980s and 1990s, hit by cheap foreign travel and changing expectations. The dining halls closed or were converted to self-catering. A generation's formative restaurant experience disappeared with them. Number 2. The Wimpy Cabin. Separate from the full Wimpy bars, the Wimpy Cabin was the takeaway format. Tiny kiosks serving burgers through hatches to customers who took them away wrapped in paper. These cabins clustered in seaside resorts, market squares, and anywhere people gathered. The menu was simpler than the full restaurants. Burgers, hot dogs, chips, milkshakes, everything designed to be eaten while walking or sitting on benches. For teenagers in the 1970s, the Wimpy Cabin was the social hub. You gathered there after school, you hung around at weekends, you spent your pocket money on benders and Coke. The smell of frying onions was the smell of freedom. The cabins themselves were prefabricated, transportable, designed to go wherever custom gathered. A burger cost about 30 pence, manageable even on paper-round wages. They vanished gradually through the 1980s as councils cleared sites and McDonald's absorbed the market. But for a generation, the the wimpy cabin was where adolescence happened. And finally, number 1, the ABC Bakery Cafe. Before Costa, before Starbucks, before the coffee shop colonized every British high street, there was the ABC Bakery Cafe. Associated British cinemas expanded from films into catering, opening cafes connected to their cinemas that eventually became destinations in their own right. The formula was simple: fresh baked goods, displayed in glass cases. Tea and coffee, served in proper cups with sauces. Light lunches for shoppers. Afternoon tea for those with time to spare. An ABC was not just a cafe, it was a meeting place, a rest stop. Somewhere respectable ladies could sit unaccompanied without raising eyebrows. The Welsh rarebit was legendary. The cream cakes, baked on premises, drew queues on Saturday mornings. A pot of tea and a slice of Victoria sponge cost about 40 pence, an affordable luxury in an era when that concept still made sense. The chain declined as ABC's cinema business fragmented and property became too valuable for modest cafes. But the ABC created a template for civilized daytime eating that the coffee chains would eventually rediscover and monetize. Every time you pay £4.50 for a flat white and a muffin, you are paying for a pale imitation of what the ABC Bakery Cafe did better and cheaper half a century ago. Here is my challenge. Find someone who remembers these places. Ask them what dining out felt like in the 1970s. Watch their face as they recall the Burney Inn prawn cocktail, the Little Chef Olympic breakfast, the Wheeler's oyster bar. Then look at the Nando's, the Pizza Express, the Wetherspoons that line our high streets today. Ask yourself honestly, have we progressed or have we lost something we cannot name? Because I walked past a surviving wimpy bar last month. I went in. I ordered a burger on a plate with chips and peas, and for 15 minutes I understood what we threw away. The pace was slower, the service was personal, the food was honest rather than marketed. Share which one you remember in the comments. I want to know if the golden egg gets more love than the happy eater. I want to know if anyone else's dad took them to an Angus steakhouse for their birthday. Because these were not just restaurants, they were the places where Britain learned to eat out. And we will not see their like again.